Hello, everyone. Welcome to this special broadcast. We are discussing Kashmir and what awaits Kashmir as we see the second anniversary of the end of special status coming up to our revocation of March 7. Joining me to discuss the impact, Praveen Swami, an expert in all matters strategic and security. Praveen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Also, Mufti Islam, an expert in everything that is related to Jammu and Kashmir, my colleague at CNN. Thanks, Mufti, for taking time out.
Thanks.
So,
Thanks.
before I begin my conversation with Praveen and Mufti, just to set up why we are discussing this, especially in light of law and order, as the Ministry of Home Affairs data shared with the Indian Parliament, it is seen that in the last 2 years, from August 5th, 2019 up until 2021 August, there has been massive reduction in the number of terror incidents. If you go by MHA data, they're saying close to 60%, almost 59% is the reduction percentage between 2019 and 20, and about 32% reduction in terror incidents and law and order incidents if you compare 2021 with the same time in 2020. Essentially, MHA is saying that ever since Article 370 and the special status of Jammu and Kashmir was taken away, the state was made into union territory and was split into two. There has been massive improvement in the law and order situation. On that point, Mufti Islam, tell us about things that we don't hear of. The numbers tell us that law and order situation has improved. Is there any ifs and buts to that narrative?
Well, the statistics clearly suggest that there has been reduction in terms of stone pelting, as well as on militancy incidents, be it firing on security forces or political workers. They're suggesting that there has been, some 29% between 2019 to 2020, and then again 40% to the last year's figures. But of course, there's buts. If you take out a statement in terms of people who are recruiting in militancy, clearly, I'm sorry that I don't share that enthusiasm with you, given that this year we had, 7 months have gone by of this year. There have been some 90 militants who have been killed. But having said that, 70 have been recruited, and these are people who have kind of, announced their, signing up for militancy. Although this time around, we've not seen militants really, youngsters not announcing they're signing up for militancy on social media networks like they would always do. So clearly, some suggest that the number of recruitments would be more, perhaps another 20 or so, which means that, when you're killing militants, there is equal number of militants who are coming in, and there seems to be a zero-sum game. That said, on that aspect, again, if you take a look at what the security forces or any army corps commander, some 20 or 15 years have been saying that, well, the number of militancy in Jammu and Kashmir, and this is a regular kind of a question that media persons ask here. So what is the number of militants in the valley? So clearly the answer comes between 200, 250. These are the figures that security forces have been giving us since last 20 years. And a few days back, we did ask similar kind of a question. What is the number of militants who are operating on the ground? So that comes the answer that it's 200. So what have the security forces achieved? If you're killing militants, clearly these are statistics only, but it seems that it's a zero-sum game. But yes, there has been some kind of an improvement on overall law and order situation. Stone pelting has certainly come down, but that perhaps has to do with a lot of arrests that have taken place. And clearly, there are times where in 5 years when a group of stone pelters were taken care of, arrested, slapped with PSA, they go down in terms of the stone pelting incidents, but a new crop comes in. That's an issue. It seems that militancy is really a zero-sum game here.
Right, but 2-3 things that the administration there is trying to do. A lot of people who were arrested under PSA or other sections of the law were actually sent out of Jammu and Kashmir. A lot of Kashmiri unwanted elements in jails of Uttar Pradesh, for example, that could have proved to be a deterrent. Security Grid also says that the fact that internet was cut down meant WhatsApp admins were sitting in Pakistan giving directions to stone pelters. That was cut down as well. This is all the analysis that the security grid has. But Praveen, the point that Mufti is making, that recruitment is now happening. Foreign terrorists, the numbers might have gone down drastically, but the recruitment is now happening of locals. And every time you kill one local terrorist, you end up alienating a family. And that seems to be a strategy of Pakistan as well, isn't it? To try and give an impression to the world in the backdrop of FATF that Pakistan has nothing to do with this. This problem is completely India's own group.
Absolutely, Arunima. I think you've summed it up really well there. If you take a slightly sort of longer view of this problem, the danger here is that in Kashmir, over the years, at various points in this sort of unending, grinding conflict, we've been quick to declare victory. So, before the Kargil war, everyone was saying, oh, normalcy is back, things are wonderful. And then there was Kargil and we had 2 terrible years. Then again in the early 2000s, everyone was saying, oh, things have gone down, normalcy is back around the corner. This was said in the run-up to the terrible violence we saw after 2016 with the killing of Burhan Wani, that, oh, we've had an election, everything's good, things are quiet. So it doesn't take very much for things to change. And one of the indicators of the underlying problem, of course, is exactly as Mufti pointed out, that you have some numbers of young people who are getting seduced by the jihadist sort of message. Foreign terrorists coming in, not in large numbers, but they're coming in. You've had this story of drones dropping weapons across the border on a quite regular basis. I think it's, none of us are astrologers in this group. You can't predict which way things are going to go. But there are some worrying signs here. And the most worrying sign, of course, that the alienation and anger of young people whom the political system didn't really engage and deal with, that led Kashmir to blow up in 2008, again in 2010, again in 2016. So the question to be asked is this the lull before the storm? Again, as I said, I'm not an astrologer, but definitely if I was sitting in high office in Delhi and dealing with this, I'd be asking myself if there were things I could be doing other than killing terrorists to deal with this problem.
Right. So, Mufti, we come in on that. The way to assess the impact of the last 2 years would have been to also speak to people on the ground. But first, post revocation lockdown, then the COVID pandemic related lockdown, schools shut, shops shut, markets shut, tourists not coming in. Has that denied an opportunity to our policymakers to really assess on the ground the feeling? I mean, has the pandemic also played a role in keeping people indoors and therefore perhaps giving a sense that all is well?
No, I think in 2019, people were taken by surprise. So they couldn't really process what had happened, although they knew that something is going to come. Something disastrous, something sinister, by Kashmiri standards, by Kashmir's point of view. So clearly, they seem to be unprepared for that. And that's why there was this lull. And then centers crackdown, the initial crackdowns that took place. The NIA was raiding, the Hurriyat offices were being raided, separatists were being raided, JKLF cadres were being taken in. For that matter, Jamaat Islami was being banned. So all these played a factor. And this fear psychosis really, it kind of stunned the people into silence. And the people so far have not been able to come out. As Praveen is rightly saying, this could be a lull before a storm. But clearly there's a lot of security element which has come in, and they've understood this. They did a lot of good work during that time in understanding the psyche of the people. And also there was a fatigue factor because 2016 happened and there was a lot of street demonstration and center really cracked down on the people. They arrested large number of people. So we couldn't actually see eruption of those street demonstrations on the street that time around. And then COVID happened. So people really didn't get time to assemble or collect because center always didn't encourage people to assemble. Even on Eid, people were told to, celebrate Eid at their homes and not to venture out because they anticipate that, if people get an opportunity to assemble, perhaps they would come out and protest and demonstrate, uh, as to what happened on August 5, 2019, because
Hmm.
this is rankling in the minds of the people, that here was a decision where people of Jammu and Kashmir were not taken into confidence, and this was a kind of a unilateral decision that center has really taken. So this uncertainty is there. There's a lot of fear because of the security boots that are there, and there's been a lot of additional security which
Right.
was gotten in 2019, and that's not gone. Although temporarily they went out during the elections in other states, be it Bengal, but they've again been brought in. So clearly, a lot of security presence, and also the fear factor that was there post 2019, from which people have not really been able to come out or exercise their protests, or some kind of demonstrations on the street, even if the people have not been even able to write on social media, because government comes in very quickly and
Hmm.
slaps PSA, UAPA. So these
Right.
kind of instruments, tools that government has really used, it's kind of silenced the people out here.
I do want to discuss the center's outreach, Mufti, but just give me a moment. Praveen, boots on the ground, we've managed to sustain them for almost 2 years now. But long term, how much of it is possible? It seems like almost 80% of the CRPF is now concentrated in Jammu and Kashmir. But now, like we were discussing earlier, Pakistan's scrutiny in FATF is coming to an end. Taliban's resurgence is a factor. The security grid is worried. Is this the future of Kashmir? So many paramilitary and military personnel on the ground there in civilian areas also?
Interesting. I mean, to the second part of your question, first, I think the impact of the Taliban on the scenario. Um, it's not like the Taliban are going to come marching from southern Afghanistan or Kabul to Kashmir. There's quite a lot of Pakistan occupied Kashmir in the middle, and the realistic picture in Afghanistan is probably that you're going to have some level of civil war and bloodshed, sadly and tragically, for some length of time to come. But there's a couple of other problems. The secondary problem is that you have a number of terrorists and terrorist groups training in Afghanistan. You've had the United Nations Security Council watchdog, which monitors sanctions, saying for some years now that the Jaish-e-Mohammed, the Lashkar-e-Taiba, others have shifted their training bases to Afghanistan in an effort to, give Pakistan a little fig leaf of cover over its activities. The second factor is that there hasn't really been terrorist attacks outside of Jammu and Kashmir ever since the Pathankot air base attacks
Yes.
on a large scale. And that's partly because Indian terrorists who've been training there, the Americans have been there to bomb. So many of the jihadists from Kerala who went over there were bombed by United States forces. Now that is going to change. Another layer of problem. The third layer of problem is that this will be seen within the wider global jihadist movement, the American pullout, as a victory. And that will embolden some people in Kashmir. If you look at, Islamist writers in Kashmir in the late 80s, they were really emboldened by the Soviet defeat in Afghanistan, and some of that may happen again. The question of troops, not really an issue. I mean, so, you'll see this figure of 5 lakh troops or 7 lakh troops or 8 lakh troops in the Pakistani and Western media, and that's not really correct. You probably have 5 brigades of soldiers deployed on internal security duty. That's some 50,000 troops. The bulk of the Indian military presence there is on the line of control. And that was there in peaceful years as in bad years. The CRPF is basically there on law and order duty, not as a counter-insurgency force. So, it can stay there. India has no insurmountable sort of other law and order problems that it needs to deal with. In the long term, though, you're quite right. The presence of large number of forces alienates people. There's inevitably friction, with the local population. There are inevitably incidents of misbehavior and of violence, and all this sort of adds into the pot of discontent. My guess is that these forces will be there at least until an election is held. Now, that may be, as some people speculate, late this year or early next year after the UP elections. These forces are going to be needed. I think, though, that the sooner they're out, the sooner Delhi is able to restore some sort of give some breathing space to everyday life, so you're not running into checkpoints and this inevitable friction not taking place, the better off down the road to restoring some sort of normal that might be.
Right. Final word to you, Mufti, then. That is the big takeaway that everybody is talking at the end of 2 years. Prime Minister's attempt to end Dil se and Dilli se doori. The attempt to ensure local body elections, Delimitation Commission, holding elections, and the promise of statehood. Is that something that Jammu and Kashmir is looking forward to? Is that something which will end the doori that Prime Minister is talking about?
Well, you heard Umar Abdullah in an interview with a rival channel, and clearly he said that after that outreach which Prime Minister did by inviting the all parties from Jammu and Kashmir, clearly there has been no follow-up. And Mahbuba, Omar, they've expressed their anguish that not much changed on the ground. The uncertainty is there, the bureaucratic hegemony is there in the valley. There's no political outreach which has happened. There's still tussle on what should come first. Should statehood come first or elections should come? The Kashmir party as well as Congress wants that first statehood should be given, that perhaps center can pursue with the elections. That's one contentious point. And on the ground, people have not been able to really breathe freely since 2019. And what is happening is that new orders are coming daily, which kind of push people to the wall. These orders where outsiders are kind of given access to the valley resources. I've seen Kashmir absolutely not happy. They've pegged the losses to 40,000 crores in last 3 years. First to begin with, when special status was downgraded, rather it was ended. So clearly there are losses. Tourism is not flourishing, although in July this year now they've started some kind of footprints there. But people certainly are not happy with this. And also these new orders, the one that was recently on employees where some employees were terminated, and then another one where people were saying that whoever has kind of adverse report, they would not be given jobs, they would not be given passports. So these are kind of instilled a lot of fears in the valley. And clearly the political leadership as well as the common man on the ground, especially in the valley, if not in Jammu, they're not happy with what is happening. And also you have to see politically what is happening. Ladakh, which kind of came out and celebrated the August 5, 2019 move, is again not happy with UT status. A few days back, they had a meeting between Kargil and lay leaders who otherwise don't see an eye to eye.
Right.
They came
Right.
together and they've now said that we need full statehood with the legislators. So what has happened actually in these 2 years? People almost in all three regions are not happy. Jammu, there are murmurs of dissent where people now in Jammu are also saying that there should be some kind of a protection to land, job, resources, etc. Because they feel that if outsiders come in, perhaps they will lose, that reservation for jobs. They
Right.
don't actually really want to share jobs or land. These are very extremely sensitive issues here.
Right. Mufti, thanks so much for giving us that perspective. Mufti and Praveen both sharing with us the concerns that are there at the end of 2 years. But if you see from the point of view of the central government, there are various plus points that they would highlight. And I think all three of us would agree that law and order is something that the government has managed to get a control on, like we discussed, stone pelting, terror incidents, even the ceasefire agreement, which has now been signed, reiterated with Pakistan, has shown results. So on law and order, a definite plus that the central government will showcase. There are other areas which need finding out: economic boost, more employment opportunities, concerns about land, about domicile, concerns about what future awaits Kashmir. I think what the central government would want is to iron out those issues as well. So it's a work in progress. We'll have to wait and see where Jammu and Kashmir really goes, when that statehood is returned, and in what form. Once again, Praveen and Mufti, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.